Okay, guys, this is for the grade 10 communication technology class in regards to your photo collage. Okay. When in Photoshop, guys, you're going to start a new file, and you're going to make sure it's 8.5 by 11. Okay. So if you go to your preset, you'll have the US paper, and by default, a letter, legal, and tabloid are the main options. You want to go letter. Now, you could off the bat, if you want to switch the orientation from landscape to portrait, you can just change the numeric values. So width would be 11 and a half. Here you can also change the transparency. I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to show you can change that afterwards. But if you'd like to work in transparency, you can just make it transparent. So 8.5 by 11, resolution is 300, RGB is fine, and white. All right, so first thing is, oops, I made a mistake. I want to actually make this a landscape. Not a big deal. Go to image and go to image rotation, and you can do a counterclockwise. All right, so now my orientation is landscape. Now, you always have to have a layer, but if I want to make a transparent layer, well, what I'll do is, and I'll zoom in here, is click on this little icon here, and that is a create a new layer. And what you can do is grab that layer and just throw it in the garbage can. You can do that with any layer within Photoshop. So now I have a new layer that's blank. Okay. Now, mind you, if you just wanted a solid color background, I can get this layer. And if I go to my gradient tool here, I did show you guys yesterday the gradient tool, but I can also click and hold and just do a paint bucket tool. Okay. Paint bucket tool will fill up any space with the foreground color. So if you zoom up here, here's your foreground and background. So if I double click this box, I get the array of colors, and you can pick it up and down like the hue and choose what color you want. Now I can paint bucket this whole area on one color. That's one way. I'm going to press Command Z, or notice that Photoshop has this little icon right here that allows you to go back to history. You can go back multiple steps. So it's like undoing a step. Okay. You can also go to edit, undo a state. Me personally, I like the history. I can click and choose what specific point of time that I want. Okay, so that's a nice feature using the history. Okay, can't find history? Go to Window. It's in alpha order. Look at history, and this will pop up. Another way to change the background, solid color. If you go to Edit and Fill, the shortcut is Shift F5, and you can say I want this white, black, gray, a pattern, or color. Color will pop up, the same dialog box, and you can pick and choose the color you want, and it will fill that layer with that color. So two options, the paint bucket or the fill feature. Okay. If you don't like that and you want a gradient, well, use the gradient tool. So click and hold. And guys, remember, any Photoshop tool that has a triangle, you click and hold it. For example, this eraser, if you click and hold it, will show you other tools. Okay. So I'll go back to the gradient tool. The gradient tool, if you go to the top left, has a little dialog box here. And if you notice, there's also different styles. You can do a radial gradient. So if I click and drag from here to there, it'll create a circular pattern as opposed to a linear pattern. Okay. Clicking this will pick the defaults, but if you want to pick and choose a funky gradient of your own, double click it, and a box will pop up. And remember, with the gradient tool, if you hover your mouse over top of this area, you can click and add a color. Now, if you double click that color, or if you go over here, you can pick and choose a color that you want for that area. Now, you can pick and choose where you want that color, and you can pick the midpoint of the slider. If you don't like a color, you click on it, there's a delete button. Now, if you double click another color, you can replace it. And you can always add other colors to your points. Is that cool? Right. And then when you click and drag, and guys, when you click and drag your slider, you're telling that you want the first color. So check this out. If I let go in the middle, it's going to end the color that way. But if I click and drag to the end, it's going to be more of a distinct gradient. Is that cool? So that's how you use the gradient tool for your background. All right. So that covers pretty much covering your background colors. If you add new layers, you can. Using the text tool, guys, click your text tool. And by default, once you start clicking, it makes a new layer and calls it a text layer. It's a little distinctive from the other layers. Having your name on your collage is a mandatory thing. So we know who your collage is. Okay. Now, if you just want to use your first name, that's cool. If you want to use your first and last name, it's up to you. All right. So I'll type in Almeida. I'm going to press Command A to select everything there. And up here, you can pick and choose the cool fonts. I will show you another tutorial on how to install fonts on your computer from the website. Okay. I'm okay with that font, and I'll show you some cool styles that you can do to your name as well. All right, so we're going to move on and talk about bringing images into your Photoshop collage. Now, if you go to Finder, which is this happy face smiley Macintosh guy, and you have your downloads, you have an array of images. Sure, I'll just bring in a PDF. You can bring different formats into Photoshop. I think if I bring this PDF, it's going to ask me to what page on the PDF I want to bring in. So say I want to bring in this shoe. I'm going to press OK. Now, this is a student's project, and I'm just going to hide everything else right now. I just want the shoe. So it's transparent, but I want to get rid of the other stuff. Now, I'm going to show you a few ways to erase things on images. Now, typically, students would probably use the eraser tool, and that's fine. And if you go over here, you can pick and choose what kind of brush you want to use. A standard flat brush. You can pick and choose a size. Oh, one thing I got to do, guys, I didn't rasterize it. So if you right-click, you can rasterize a layer. But by default, it asked me, and I did it already. Here's a little cool trick, guys. If you look at your keyboard, the parentheses next to the letter P, there is a close and open bracket. If you press on it, it will decrease and increase the size of the eraser, and that works for the brushes. So it's kind of faster than going here and clicking, dragging, where you can actually just press the parentheses, and it will decrease or increase the size. Okay? So as I'm doing that, I can erase pixels. Now, mind you, my opacity is not 100. I want my flow to be 100. I want this to erase everything on there. So that's one way, but that's kind of annoying. Like, I got to go up and down and erase things. Is there an easier way? Yes. I'm going to show you how to use the lasso marquee tool. Now, if I click and hold here, there's polygonal and magnetic. I'm going to use lasso, and what this does, if you click and drag, you can create a defined area of space. So I'm going to go and use your hand and eye coordination, guys. So this might be different for other people with their dexterity skills. So I'm just going to hover around this, and I'm going to finish where I ended. So I've created a mask. I'm going to press delete, and what do you think is going to happen? Anybody? It's going to delete that area that I hovered around. So I'm going to press the delete button, and boom, it erased that whole area. Okay? So yeah, the eraser tool is fun. You just kind of click and drag, but is it really efficient? Probably not. Okay? Had I used the polygonal mask tool, let's click this one. This one would have been fine as well. I could have clicked and drag an area like that. And the main thing is, guys, finish where you started. And it would have done the same thing. Okay? I'm going to press Command D. So now I can hover this object without the other riffraff of the what was in that image. Okay? Now, some of you guys have images that have white backgrounds. Some of you guys have images that don't have white backgrounds. Okay? I'm going to go Google here and click on Tools and say I want large Nike running shoes. I'm going to type in shoes because I like shoes, I like running, and I want a shoe in my collage. Now, I'm going to pick this one here, select it. I'm going to say View Image. I'm going to right-click on it and save the image. And it's going to automatically go to my Downloads folder, which I'm okay with that. Now, here's my suggestion. Sir, do you always want to just click and drag it when you open up an image? In this case, I'm going to go File Shop Open and open this image from Photoshop as opposed to just clicking and dragging from Finder, and you'll see why. I'm going to go to File, Open, go to my Downloads folder, and by default, by date modified, it's the first shoe that popped up. Now, this is going to open it up in a new tab, and I want that because I want to take out the white background here and then drag the transparent image into my collage. So watch this. Now, by default, guys, everything you open has a locked layer. Sir, how do you unlock it? Just double click on it, and you'll get a dialog box that pops up like this, and you'll unlock it. Okay. Here's a really cool tool to getting rid of single color backgrounds. You guys ready? Okay, it's called the magic wand tool. Now, by default, I think it shows up as quick selection. Quick selection is a good tool, but for a white background, the magic wand tool is way better. Okay, I'll explain these in a second. I'm just going to have this at my regular default. Notice there's these sample ratings. Tolerance 32. What that means is I'm going to click a pixel. What's a pixel? I'm going to zoom in. And as I get closer, you guys will notice that the image is actually comprised of little small squares called pixels or bitmaps. Okay? What this tolerance means is if I click a single color pixel, it wants to pick 32 very similar pixels to that color. Okay? So I'm going to zoom back out. I'm going to press Command 0. And I'm going to have contiguous on. I only want the outside white to be selected. So when I click on this white, it's clicking 32 pixels, very similar. Now you're probably wondering, hey sir, why didn't it pick the Nike logo inside? Isn't that white? Well, I had the contiguous on. Now I'm going to take it off. I'm going to press Command D to deselect. And I'm going to click it again. Notice it selected it. Contiguous is good if you don't want it picking the inside color white. Does that make sense? So I only want the white background. Photoshop's going to stop when it feels a pixel color that's not that white and stop from there. So when I click on the white background, it's picking only the background. All right. So when I press delete, it's deleting all that white in that background. All right. Note. Notice that kind of masked area? You're probably thinking, oh, sir, if I drag this in, it's going to bring the shoe in. No, it's not. It's going to bring this empty space. Oh, okay. So how do I get just the shoe? Well, there's two ways. You're going to select and say, I want it inverse. Notice the mask is only on the shoe. Okay? Another way is just press Command D, which is deselecting the mask. So notice the mask is gone. If I, be patient guys when you do this, click and drag this onto the tab of your shoe and slap it on. Okay? Notice it brings it in and it's not rasterized. So if you're bringing images that you're not going to touch up, just drag them into your collage. If you're going to do some type of manipulation to it, open it in Photoshop and then drag it in as a manipulated image. Is that helpful? Okay. So there's my shoe. I can rotate it, guys. Now, scaling it, guys. There's two ways. You could go to Edit, Transform, or Free Transform. Free Transform does everything. So Command T. Or you just have your selection tool and just make sure the top auto select and show transfer controls are on, and you'll get that dialog box. If I don't have this on, you're like, hey sir, where's those boxes to change it? Well, you don't have that on. Or you just press Command T and it'll have it. So it's up to you. Me personally, I like having it on because I always want to control it. Remember, if you're scaling something and you want it proportional, hold Shift with your left hand, drag one of the corners, and increase the scale. Okay? Hover your mouse over top. You can rotate it to any way you like it. And press Enter to accept that transformation. Now, if you want this shoe to be behind another object, just change the order of your layer, and you'll get things overlapping. Okay? Now, not to bore you guys, you would continue this until you get all your objects. Okay? I'm going to show you a few things called layer styles. Now, if I double click this layer, not clicking the text part, if I double click the text part, I'll get a rename. But if you hover your mouse over to the right hand side, you get this thing called layer styles. You can also activate layer styles by going layer, layer style, and then picking the choice. Okay. Outer glow, okay, or just double clicking. I find double clicking easier. Now, what are layer styles? They're cool little styles that you can apply to a layer that kind of, if you're looking for ways to emphasize or enhance a object, this is a cool way of doing it. For example, I want to do a cool outer glow. Now, you won't see it right now, but I'm going to go normal, choose a color. I shall pick, actually, this is kind of cool if anybody knew this, but if you hover your mouse and you click on something else, it'll pick that color from that object. Is that kind of cool? I can increase the spread. So you'll notice that there's a little, did you guys see it? There's a shadow growing around my shoe. Okay. And you can play with the opacity. If you don't like that color, you can pick and choose a different color. I shall pick a color Actually, that makes kind of sense, picking the color within the color of the shoe. And it'll make it glow, and you can pick and choose the spread, the size, the fading of it, and it just makes that shoe enhance a bit because it pops up. I'm not saying you should do this to every object in your collage, but maybe things that are more important to you, you give them a little style. Now, that was just one effect. If I double click, I can say I don't want that effect, and I want to try something else. I want a drop shadow. Drop shadow is kind of cool. Let's go to normal and distance. You'll see a drop shadow appear on the object, and it makes it look like it's levitating over top of the other objects. Anyways, I'll let you guys play around. You can do a stroke that puts a outline around it, and this is something that you would do only primarily to objects that have been knocked out. When I say knocked out, the background's been removed. Is that cool? All right. How about I leave it at that? Is that enough to get you guys going? Okay. Um, I'll leave you one little tip. If I bring an image that doesn't have, I'll just use this one. I'll bring it into the Photoshop collage. Enter it. Say I scale it down, and I want to bring it below. And notice, guys, I'm going to press Enter to accept it. See, this icon has a linked. It's got to be rasterized. I'm going to right-click and say rasterize a layer. So now it's part of this composition, and I can do more things to it. The eraser tool. There's a little cool feature. If you go to your brush and pick a fuzzy brush, you can actually kind of fade the edges and fade things in. So you can erase pixels and kind of have them. So I'm just going to, actually I should go back. I don't want to get rid of the football. It's kind of cool. So I can just fade things there on the edges. Okay, and get rid of those pixels. And you can still have a cool way of cropping an object. I'll show you a more advanced way of getting rid of the background in my next lesson. Okay, is that cool for now? Excellent. I'm going to stop my video.